This is the GPL podcast from GopherPuckLive.com. This podcast is sponsored by Jerry Peters and First Class Mortgage. Our expertise, your peace of mind. Visit us at firstclassmortgage.com. Now let's start the show with your hosts, Jupiter and Vigo. Good evening and welcome to the GPL podcast, episode number 211. Well, Vigs, it's been a good month so far. It's been a really good month.
Right. I mean, all the drama that's happened to Gopher hockey and they escape with this winning streak. Did not see it coming. I feel like every weekend I was kind of hedging my bets against this team and predictions going, split would be good for them.
Mm-hmm.
If they get that, you should be happy. And what do? They just keep winning.
All they do is win. Well, there was an interesting stat that came out the other day that our guest talked about. But before we kind of go into that, we need to introduce him. It's Badger Week. Vigs, and it's Badger Week. What do? We have Todd Milewski on, don't we?
One of the great writers in college hockey, covers it like few out there.
Yeah. Well,
welcome, Todd.
There he is. Hey, Todd, how you doing?
Hi. I'm great. How are you guys?
We might be a little bit better than you right now. Obviously, the Badger men's struggling. Even the Badger women. Okay, Badger men's struggling. Kind of say. It's the Badger women. It all of a sudden just hit the wall too, and it's been a little odd. I mean, they go forever without losing a game, and now all of a sudden they're getting swept a couple times. What's happening over there?
Well, they started the season one player short of a full lineup, so that was a bad, not a great way to start. Knowing that you're never going to have a full lineup. And the first thing that Mark Johnson told me is that we have to stay healthy. Yeah, it seems pretty obvious. And in the last 2 weeks, they've lost 3 players. So that, in addition to 2 players that went out for the season in the first half, the numbers are a struggle right now. And that's, you can, I think, get by on that for a while. But when you get into month 4 and month 5 and into the season, when you're playing 2 lines a lot and maybe a third, the grind is real, I think. And that's,
and we're talking before the show here, it's kind of what happened to Team USA's women's squad. At that last game against Canada, they played like 2 lines, hardly played the rest of the team. And it's like, you can't do that against the top quality teams. You just can't.
The Brianna Decker injury hurt so much. And I think you saw that more than just the Canada games. There was some real lack of depth.
Yeah.
Which is sad to say because that's the team they put together, right? For this specific thing. And they lose one of the players, obviously a key player, and then it kind of crumbles.
Well, and one thing with the Team USA makeup like that, you have the choice to develop talent over time. And we talk to college hockey coaches about this all the time. The team you're building in November is not the best team you have. You're building for a team that's going to arrive in March, April with your best chance. And so you take your lumps early in the development process, trying to get players ready for that moment where you need them. And I remember seeing something in The Athletic where it showed ice time distribution by lines, and that top heaviness of Team USA looked like some of the small high school teams would use their team in the tournament. And you just can't do that on a world stage against a program as dominant as Canada. So a little women's hockey talk to kick off the show. That's
hey,
for us.
I don't mind it at all. I just, it's not like we can talk about the Badger men right now. Only
wait a minute, why am I here? Wait.
Only joking. We have you here because you're an all-around expert on a lot of things. So,
well, thanks.
Not just Badger hockey. As I kind of talked about earlier, there's one interesting stat that you put out yesterday, or maybe the day before.
What day is it today? I don't even know.
Everyone talked about Minnesota and Michigan losing all these players. What are they going to do? Vase and I talked about it. We'd be happy with 3 or 4 wins, kind of 500-ish. And you tweet out the other day, both teams went undefeated, combined 12-0, while their best players were out, Todd. Not probably what most of us expected.
No, I remember talking probably about a month ago with some people after one of the games, just saying, okay, is this the opportunity for Ohio State and Notre Dame to jump in and become the favorites for the title? And we're kind of like, well, I mean, I don't feel bad about the depth on either Michigan or Minnesota, but I mean, that's not like losing a third liner or a third D pair guy. I mean, that's obviously significant losses for a couple of weeks. But wow, 12-0 between them showed us where to stick that, I guess.
Well, Viggs, I mean, we didn't see it coming at all. I was trying to be positive. Hey, they'll get 5 points this weekend. They'll get 5 points that weekend. But 3 straight sweeps, Viggs. It's been really good for Minnesota. They killed a few demons in Hockey Valley this past weekend with some 2 solid victories. Maybe Saturday night didn't start as well as we wanted it to, but Penn State was definitely a huge success for this team.
Yeah, well, I think when you looked at the players that were leaving for the Olympics, I wasn't too worried about Brock Faber leaving because the defensive depth at Minnesota is pretty deep. And if anything, it just gave Mike Kester a chance to shine even more than he has already this season. We saw that when the players went to the World Juniors 2 years ago, when Kester was almost that extra defenseman that was going to get named to the team, and USA Hockey went another direction. And Kester really shined during that experience where he was leaned on pretty heavily. And he really came through. He was the player that kind of ignited things on Saturday for Minnesota when they really needed him. And then the other thing is it created an opportunity for freshmen like Hughlin and Pitlick to take more steps forward. They got more ice time, more special teams time. I think they were the power play unit that looked the most dangerous over the last 3 weeks. And that's what you need for this team to be ready for March, is having another line besides the Myers line and the Walker line. And I think they have it now with the Hughlin line.
I would say Friday night was kind of a workman-like win, would you say? A good, solid 3-1 win. They just played well all around. Maybe Saturday didn't play anything in the first period and then show how they come back. I mean, one thing we've seen this year, they have been able to come back several times.
Yeah, they're showing ways to win different kinds of hockey games, and that's going to be important for them. And this is the first time we see them rally off a stretch of games consistently where they don't let a bad period, break a weekend. I think we're still looking for some power play consistency out of this team, and I don't know if we're going to get it. Like, this would have been a stretch maybe to tinker with things and try new players. But Bob just hasn't figured out the right potion to pull out for this squad, and I don't think it's coming.
So on this side, Todd, Minnesota's kind of still going upwards here. It's not looking great for Granato's squad over there at the present time.
That's correct.
And there's a question here. How hot is Granato's seat?
Badger red hot. Badger red hot.
Very warm. I've been looking for, trying to read between the lines in some things. Granato hasn't given up. He's been down some days after some games, but he's talking a lot about the future and about, we'll do this next year. I need to learn from some mistakes. So he's not planning on going anywhere from anything I can tell. And he wants, a chance to prove that last year was the kind of team that he can have. But 4 losing seasons out of 5 doesn't play well with the diehards. And that's where you get the more casual fan into it and saying, well, what the heck's going on? Even though, I only drop in every once in a while, but I've never seen a team like this, that kind of thing. It's strange times here in a lot of ways, in that there are a lot of concerns about just the just the overall health of this program as a top tier program. It really hasn't been that way for the last decade. Some ups, some high points, sure.
Oh yeah.
But do you consider them an elite program anymore? A very fair question. And I the answer for me is, probably not. I mean, who's in that class right now? And would you be able to put Wisconsin in there? It's hard, given, just looking at, if you take the last 15 and 20 years, there's been more downs than ups. And I think that's part of the thing that gets on a lot of the longtime fans, is that you can understand some down seasons. You can't understand some down 5-year spans.
And Viggs, we've talked about it since the beginning of the Big Ten. As fans, Badgers stinking. Who cares? Stinking Badgers. But for the overall health of the Big Ten, Viggs, we've talked about this. A good Badger team helps the league.
Very much so. The Big Ten needs rivalries and needs Wisconsin to be good for the league to be healthy. There's been talk of how good is the Big Ten this year. It'd be a lot better if Wisconsin was in the conversation for the NCAA tournament. It doesn't look like it. And I kind of look at their recruiting pipeline, and it's still that there are name talents that are committed to Wisconsin and believe that's a place they want to go play. It's not like a Penn State or, Bemidji, where they're just going to have to muck and grind and fight for players. Michigan State, when's the last time they had a premier recruit land there? But you look at Wisconsin and you see guys like Charlie Stramel committed there. That's a huge get for them. Any college hockey program in the country wants guys like that in their pipeline. But what Granato just doesn't seem to be able to do is build a roster that's going to be consistently good from year to year. And we saw all the talent that came through the last couple of years. One year they had a lot of hype and it didn't work. And then last year, Cole Caulfield brought them to a different level. I think Dylan Holloway was a big part of that. But you can't rely on a program that's going to have guys like that coming every 2 years to keep you going. You got to have more than that.
And what killed them even more last year is losing the first NCAA game, Todd. I mean, this is your big chance. And it just didn't come together for them at the end last year.
I mean, they all knew it was all set up for them, right? I mean, I still don't know whether they get past UMass in the second round, even if they beat Bemidji. I still think that's a tough matchup for them, for anyone, really.
Yeah, but Cole Caulfield, man, he was such a difference maker.
Yeah,
he was the kind of guy who, on a given night, they could have beaten any team. Yes, UMass is a great team. I'm just saying, that's just that was the thing about the Badgers last year. You get him, and you start getting some penalties, against your own team, and you've got Cole Caulfield on the power play. Good night. So, oh boy, I thought they would go much further last year.
Yeah, I mean, getting Bemidji in the first round was a looking back on it, a bad matchup for them. In that, I mean, it's the same as they have trouble matching up with older, heavier teams in a lot of ways, and that's probably not a new thing for
Minnesota either.
Yeah, well, for sure. And so we saw it again earlier this year when they just got run out of the building in St. Cloud. It's like that. That was not going to happen That was never going to go well. Michigan Tech, same thing. Older team, been around the block, plays the body really well. It was not pretty the first weekend of the season. So we had some signs pretty early that those same things were going to happen. And that's essentially what happened with Bemidji last year, is that they were able to play that game the way they wanted to. The ice didn't help. I mean, that was I think what everyone was talking about on TV, but I don't think that was the reason they won. It was a factor in the game that things were so sloppy, as they always are in Bridgeport. But that was all lined up for Wisconsin last year, and that the fact that they didn't do more with it, even get to that second round, is really something that is going to sit with a lot of people around here for a long time.
Viggs, both you and I kind of think they should just start throwing money at Mr. Rolick.
I mean, Steve Rolick is an outstanding coach. If I was sitting in the chair as the AD of Wisconsin, I would think that would be a pretty quick solution and to turn things around, because I think he understands the depth that a program needs to be successful with some continuity. And I think he'd also have the recruiting chops at a place like Wisconsin, where they actually have nice facilities to play in and a fan base to capitalize on and maybe take it to the next level. And I think that's what you need as a college hockey coach these days, is to build continuity and bring in the talent.
I do wonder, and that's the name that has come up a lot. Is he at a point where he would see that as unless it's a really significant money boost, is that a step up? That's really the only thing, is because if he comes into Wisconsin, he's how many years does it take him to install what he needs to install? A couple, right? I mean, and that's not something that's obviously going to sit well with people here. More losing seasons, and he's got a pretty decent thing other than the
facilities.
The facilities.
I mean, they need to get
going on.
But here's the thing, though. At Ohio State, when's the last time they got like a high-profile A-grade recruit from Central Scouting?
It just doesn't. Caulfield. It would have been Cole Caulfield. It just doesn't happen at Ohio State. Players want to play for premier programs, and I think that's what drew Bob to Minnesota. Was as much as these St. Cloud Husky fans want to talk about their program having more success over the years, I think Bob getting to work at the World Junior as head coach and having success there said, man, if I could do that at the World Juniors, what could I do with that kind of talent in college hockey? And you're seeing him right now dip his toes into the blue chipper recruiting and fill up his pipeline with these kinds of players. And he's going to have to figure out how to balance that with continuity. And that's going to be his biggest challenge here the next couple of years, because he's got the program in a nice spot right now. But does he give in to the devil and start bringing in too many 18-year-olds? Or does he stick to what's made him successful in the past and balance it with older guys? Like, he just got a high school defenseman from Benilde St. Margaret's to commit today. That's not a typical Bob commit. He usually waits for guys, especially defensemen, to play in the USCHL for a while. And this is a guy who's just played Elite League in high school. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does next. But I don't think the Granato method is working. And there's something to be said for development when they're here, right? I mean, you can get players in and they've gotten obviously a lot of high-end talent here. But it's that next level. And do you get them, at this level and have them get to this level by the time they're leaving? We're not seeing that from a lot of guys. We're seeing a lot of, what you expect out of players like Caulfield and Holloway and Keandre Miller. Turcotte, we didn't even really get enough of a look at for the year he was here because he was hurt for a lot of it, I don't think. The rest of the group is, those guys that are going to be 4-year guys. I don't know that we're seeing enough of an improvement out of them, or they came in too early. It took them too long to get to a point where they're comfortable in college, and you don't then get enough out of them in the whatever time you have left after that.
Todd, there's another program that's just beyond struggling, and they need a change as well. Michigan State has not won a Big Ten playoff game since they've been in the Big Ten. They're pretty much at the bottom most of the time. They need a change as well.
Which is crazy to me that we're saying that now, given where they were at the break.
That is true, because they lost one player and their whole team fell apart.
Just cratered. It has felt like a few times over the last 3 or 4 years they are ready to turn the corner, and then the bottom falls out. And I don't know. I think this season, Lewandowski is gone and it all falls apart. But if there's one guy that is gone and it all goes away, it's kind of a house of cards to begin with. So
they need to do something. They have to do something. It's Vig's thoughts.
Well, it's kind of baffling that he hasn't worked out. He was a guy that had spent time in Ann Arbor with the development program, and you thought by hiring him, they might get a couple more of those guys to have an interest in Michigan State and play big roles right away. And it just did not pan out that way. So it looks like the perfect hire for them at the time, but I don't know. We might be seeing some more turmoil in the Big Ten with coaching staffs for the next year.
And they're a program that, for historically, I think of them as a workman-like program, right? They're not the blue chip guys, but they're going to get, kind of like we've seen out of Ohio State. They're going to get guys that come in maybe underranked and have a lot to prove and go out there and do it. I think that's what we've seen a lot of years at Ohio State. I thought that's where they were going to start with at Michigan State, but that hasn't, we haven't seen that. That hasn't been the way it's gone at all. A few good players, obviously. Lewandowski, Hirose. These are guys that Kodorenko. That line they had that 1 year or a couple of years was just ridiculous. But
killed the Gophers many times.
Yeah,
but when you think of Michigan State the last 6 years, you think of the KHL line, and that's really about it.
That's it, right? That's the mark for the Danton Cole era. Yeah.
Something's got to change. It could be interesting. We could see two. Well, it's potential. We could see 3 big changes because, Michigan State, Wisconsin, and maybe Wisconsin goes after Rolick. So it can be crazy.
And there's the shakeout at Michigan because Mel Pearson might not survive.
What's happening there, right?
His infidelities to the school in terms of being truthful.
Well, I saw somebody commenting on Twitter that he's looking to try to cancel those games this weekend. Okay, can't play them because then they would win based off win percentage or something like that. Todd, did they ever officially do point percentage? Is that official if games aren't completed
this season? Yes.
Okay, so I wasn't sure if that was ever officially done.
Excuse me. So yes, they changed the standings if that all games can't be played. But if you go back and look at the tiebreakers, they still talk about winning percentage. So they can't even get things straight in their own protocols from one thing to another.
Nothing shocking there.
And I honestly think it's just that, they don't realize it until well after the point where they can change it. Somebody brings it up, in February, and it's like, oh yeah, I guess it says winning percentage. That's what they decided on.
Could make for an interesting weekend at least, wouldn't it, Viggs?
It would make for an interesting weekend. I think the hockey that we have on tap at Mariucci is still going to be interesting. A lot of good storylines with Jared Moe coming back to the rink to play the team that he was on the roster for last year. He's been pretty good for Wisconsin this year. I don't think he's gotten a lot of help out in front of him, but I do think for him, the move has actually been pretty good for his game. It's too bad for him personally that he probably didn't get the chance to fill Jack LaFontaine's net, but maybe he wouldn't. Closer has looked really good for Minnesota, so maybe Bob was forced into the right choice.
Well, hold off there, V's. Before we start thinking about this weekend series, we do need to take care of some business and hear from our sponsor.
Hey, fellow GPLers, Jerry Peters here from First Class Mortgage. Have you refinanced your home in the last 12 months? If you haven't, chances are you should. Record low interest rates and skyrocketing home values make this the perfect time to remove monthly PMI while improving your interest rate at the same time. You can also use the equity in your home to finance those home improvement projects. Or you can consolidate high interest rate credit cards into one new low monthly payment. To hear more, call or text me today at 612-940-3291. You can email me at jerry@firstclasscorp.com. Or you could go to firstclassmortgage.com to fill out a free online application. Mention the GPL podcast and receive a $300 closing cost credit. Some restrictions do apply. First Class Mortgage's NMLS number is 322842-480200. This is not an agreement to lock into an interest rate under Minnesota law. First Class Mortgage is an equal housing lender.
Well, thanks to Jerry for sponsoring the GPL podcast. I've got a couple questions I've keyed up here. We'll go this one first. Any word on Nyes? Did you hear anything during media day this week, Figs?
I think they're just taking it easy with Nyes this week to get him back up to speed. I think there's a very, very good chance he's back in the lineup.
All right, and let's throw this one to Todd. Is Roman Ashan coming back for one more season to try to break the all-time penalty minutes record?
Wow.
And better yet, is his dad still stalking you a little bit?
Well, his dad doesn't follow me anymore.
Oh,
so,
that's good. It's because you're terrible.
If he's in the chat, please let us know.
Yeah, I got a burner account from someone that, I don't know, maybe a parent, I don't know, made a comment on something earlier this week. So I don't know is the answer.
Well, we do know he's not playing Friday night.
He is not playing Friday night. That's correct. For the second time this season, his game misconduct accumulation has gotten to him. So he has to sit out. None of the seniors have committed to coming back or not coming back next season is what I was told when I asked.
I think that's pretty much going to be the same for Minnesota, don't you think, Viggs?
I think it's highly unlikely based on the recruits coming in that any seniors would come back for an extra year. Just kind of think it's thank you for what you've done. Appreciate it. Please come back and buy season tickets someday.
Especially not with no scholarship relief.
Right.
Season.
Yeah. And that's disappearing. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Bob had to make that choice last year with the recruits he had coming in. Looks like maybe it's the right decision so far because all the freshmen have played pretty key roles for Minnesota this year. So I would expect that to be the case moving forward for them as well.
All right, Viggs, obviously a huge weekend. I've got the Big Ten standings scrolling across the bottom of the screen now. Minnesota in second place, behind Michigan, just a couple points back. Wisconsin coming into town. They're playing at Notre Dame. It's just going to be a fun weekend all around for all these teams because I love it when the Badgers are in town no matter what. And, we're going to have, Peacock streaming on our computers while watching our game.
We're going to love that app. Peacock was great for streaming. If you got it, for the month when Minnesota's playing Notre Dame, you'll still have it, I believe.
Yes,
just like YouTube. Yeah,
I got mine. Mine expires on Sunday, so it's
perfect timing yet again. But I think it shapes up for an exciting weekend for the Big Ten. I do expect Notre Dame to give Michigan some trouble. It's just the style that Notre Dame plays.
And they were successful already against them this year.
Yep, they've shown that they can be difficult to play against. So I don't think Michigan getting even 3 points is necessarily a sure thing with that weekend coming up.
And then you look at this, Todd, and the two last teams are playing each other for fighting for last place.
Yeah, what a
maybe Michigan State can get a. I mean, they haven't won since they won a league game since early December.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine how BTN didn't choose Michigan State, Penn State for the Saturday slot, isn't it? No, that's I have to keep an eye on that series because that actually does impact where I go next weekend.
Because in theory, Penn State can pass.
Right. Well, either one can at least catch up to Wisconsin, and both have the tiebreakers, I believe, if it got to that point. But Wisconsin can't finish 7th because they both can't pass Wisconsin. So
correct.
There will be no worst to first to worst. The Badgers case.
Oh, it's Viggs, we've seen a lot of crazy weekends, obviously a lot more crazier than this, where teams have been much closer. Many teams could, finish first. This year, we know Minnesota, Michigan's going to finish first or second. Ohio State and Notre Dame's going to finish 3rd and 4th. We kind of know where things are going to go. We just don't know exactly where things are going to go yet. But it's going to be fun no matter what.
Yeah, and I think Notre Dame is the team that's playing for their pairwise life now as well. So I think they've got maybe a little extra exasperation coming in the weekend. They still have a chance to sneak in with getting some important wins over Michigan, who's at the top of the pairwise. So I think they're looking at that really hungry. But it is interesting to see the Big Ten standings. I don't think we expected this necessarily coming into the year. I mean, a lot of the coaches picked Ohio State to finish at the bottom of the league. I don't think anyone expected the bottom to drop out on Penn State and Wisconsin and Michigan State like it has this year, and where we've really seen this stratification. I think we expected to see Minnesota and Michigan fighting at the top, but not quite as wide a spread in the Big Ten as we're seeing this year. And
I would love to know who voted for who, because Motzko's like, I didn't pick them there. Yeah,
I know. I kind of wanted to ask him. So where did you pick them? Just because you pick them 6 doesn't mean you're all high and mighty over there. But I don't think he would have responded well to that follow-up.
He would have given you that crazy look like he gives to Jess Myers.
He would have given Jess Myers crazy look. That's right. Larry David.
So I assume you're coming up for this weekend, aren't you, Todd?
I am.
Nice.
It's exciting. I haven't been able to do many road trips this season because of, people don't seem to be all that interested. But hey, this is a border battle, so let's have at it.
Well, that's good. Viggs, what about you? Are you going to be coming down this weekend? I know you got a lot of kid hockey still.
I know. I'm for sure going to be there on Friday night. I got to take in this 8:00 start. I'm looking forward to that. I get to have a little time with the family before I head to the rink, which I always like. I know some people don't like the late starts. I like an early start or a late start. They're great for me.
I don't mind it because we're going to go out to dinner before the game. Maybe after the game on Saturday night. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun weekend all the way around. So, Viggs, what does Minnesota need to do? Obviously, we know just win, baby. But it's not always that simple. It's not always that simple. What does Minnesota need to do against the Badgers to be successful this weekend?
Well, I think they need to avoid doing what they did Saturday at Penn State. I think if they fall behind 3-0 this weekend, it's not going to go well. No. And I think they need to stay disciplined. Wisconsin's a team that's been a little undisciplined lately this year. I don't think their penalty kill has been especially good. So if Minnesota can stay out of the box, maybe get their power play going and just take control of the game and maybe, make Wisconsin be a little disinterested about the weekend. I think that's going to be really key for them. And I think Minnesota should continue to rely on its depth. I don't think Nyes and Myers and Faber are going to be back 100%. When we talk to them this week, they're still waking up in the middle of the night and confused what time it is. And it's, Jess wrote about their travel story the other day. And, Ben Myers said it almost took them 2 whole days to get home. And when they were in Texas, Bob said, if you guys want to go back to Minnesota, that's fine. And they, as a group, said, no, we're coming to Penn State. We want to be there for our teammates and play if we can. And so I think those guys need to be eased back into it. And it's important, I think, for Minnesota to try to play for that bye. There's a lot of extra rest in there that they could benefit from.
Todd, how is Wisconsin's psyche right now? Is this something that if they get down, they could be even in more trouble this weekend? I mean, you get down 3-zip or 2-zip after first period. What could it be ugly for this team?
Yeah, fragile, I think is probably a good way of describing it. I mean, they are putting a good face on it, but I think there's an understanding of what the reality is of this team. They're not a team that can score goals like they could last year. So any deficit is significant. It's a team that's overly reliant on good goaltending that has been inconsistent.
Yeah, but Mo's coming home.
He's excited. I talked to him today. He's excited for that. I asked him if he's expecting any, with the students behind him for 2 periods, if he knows what he's in for. And he said, "Oh yeah, I'm sure they'll have some pretty good signs of chance or something." And he says he gets fired up off of that. So we'll see how creative it can get. Hopefully within reason and within safer work things, but I think Viggs, you mentioned it, the power play for Minnesota. If Wisconsin has given up a lot of power play goals this season, and that's something that has been a tendency to get them in a hole, and so they know they need to be smart about not taking penalties. Somebody in particular, wasn't named when Tony Granato said that, but
they don't have to worry about that on Friday night.
Friday, right?
Yeah.
They need to really all weekend. They need to be smart. I mean, they're not a team that can afford a lot of taking minutes off and just get by with it. They need to be. Probably have one of those weekends where they block 25 shots to have a chance in each game. And we've seen that before at Mariucci, where they can hang around if they're in the bend but don't break kind of defense, because they have bent an awful lot in games at Mariucci in the past and managed to stay in more of them than probably they should have.
Correct. A lot more.
just because it's, there's emotions that take over in these games, right? I mean, that's
bingo.
Such a big part of it. And I think coaches try to downplay that, and players try to, say, well, we tried not to make that a big deal. It's a big deal. Let's be honest. This is,
there's still a lot of pride.
We know Wisconsin doesn't have much to play for in the standings, given they don't have pairwise to play for. What they can do is be a spoiler to any hopes Minnesota has.
Mm-hmm.
And they can have some say, in a rivalry. And I think that's something, when you get towards the end of the season, something you can remember as a positive.
All right, there it is. Predictions. Let's start with you, Todd. What do you think's going to happen this weekend?
I'm going to say either Gophers 5 or 6 points. And that's just based on
how they've played.
A lot more to play for on one side than the other. Even though we were talking about pride, there's pride plus a ring to play for on the other side. And I mean, it's just, let's look at the way the form of these two teams, right? I mean, the Badgers were lucky to get a win out of that series against Notre Dame. Otherwise, they'd be coming in on an 8-game losing streak. So I can see one of the games being close, and why I say maybe 5 points instead of 6, but I just don't like this matchup for Wisconsin.
Viggs, I think Motzko wants his bonus this year. So keep winning and hope for a Michigan loss, right?
Right. He didn't really want to talk about the scenarios that could play out this weekend. He said, we need to win Friday. We win Friday, we're going to start talking about things that are possible on Saturday. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I know you media guys are trying to goad me into this, but I'm not going to do it. But we got to win Friday. But on Saturday, we'll be watching scoreboards and we'll be paying attention to what's going on.
But you got to win Friday night.
but you got to win Friday. And I think this team's done a pretty decent job coming out on Friday nights and playing well. So I'm not expecting this scary weekend for Minnesota. I feel like they're playing with depth. This time with the Olympians gone have really allowed Hughlin and Pitlick to figure things out. I'm a little curious to see what's going to happen with Lucious. You know, he's a player that had kind of a boo-boo thing happen in Happy Valley.
We ever find out what happened there, Viggs?
We haven't really found out what happened, but he basically didn't feel like he could go. And he told Motzko that he didn't want to take away anyone's ice time if they could, do better than him. That was on a night where they were going to be short forwards. So he was just, pushing them into a situation where they had to play 11. And then when the Olympians came back, it was an easy choice for Bob to say, well, I've got enough forwards now. I don't need to worry about you being healthy. And so we'll see what happens with that situation this week. Something's bothering him. There's a lot of players on this roster that have played through some significant injuries like Myers and Kester. They battled through for their teammates. And Bob was very verbal thanking the guys who came back from China to make that Saturday game possible. Ben Myers travels for almost 2 days and he gets 3 assists. And they don't beat Penn State without him in the lineup. He's such a driver of play, especially when things aren't going well. You saw kind of over stretches where you go, oh man, I bet Bob wishes he could throw out the 9 line right now and really change the momentum of a game, like D-zone draws, being able to rely on Myers and Nyes to go out and change the momentum. They missed that when they were gone. And it'll be interesting to see how that stuff plays out, but I'm expecting 6 points this weekend.
That's what I expect too. Sweet. And then we'll just have to, I believe the Notre Dame Michigan games will be over before.
They both start at 5. The other series both start at 5 on Saturday. I was thinking about how last season, Minnesota and Wisconsin Minnesota leading going into the last weekend, but losing to Michigan that first game, then opened the door for Wisconsin on the last day. And I wonder if that'll, if Minnesota gets some help from Notre Dame on Friday, and then you've got a Saturday night home game against Wisconsin with a chance to win a championship. I hope that's a good atmosphere. I mean, I don't know what crowds have been like there, but I hope there's something.
They have not been great this year.
Well, they haven't been great. Todd, you take a photo at the beginning of every game.
Game.
It's starting to depress me.
For my own scrapbooking purpose. No, I don't. Yeah, did you see the one from Super Bowl Sunday?
You didn't hear us talk about it on the GPL podcast?
Sorry, no, I didn't.
That was.
We were wondering if that might be the lowest attended college hockey game in Big Ten history.
You got the Minnesota Michigan one. What was it officially? 1,800 and 2,200 or something like that. But,
yeah,
and
this one I was told was 1,400. So,
it was ugly.
Tight battle.
They knew what they were getting into. I mean, I was told there was nothing else they could do if they wanted to play the game, and they, felt like they needed to play the game to make sure everyone got the right, had the same number of games and they weren't going to point percentage.
Tip of the hat for playing the game.
Yeah, I mean, it was really, they knew they were going to take it on the chin there, but had to be done.
Gosh, what else we got? Corey says, it appears the Big Ten counts 3-on-3 wins as a win for tiebreaker step 1. And therefore, the Gophers own the tiebreaker with Michigan if they sweep and Michigan gets 4, regardless of how they get 4. What? Okay. This is why we have Todd here. Because Todd is the man.
I printed this out this week and put it in my notebook because I knew it was going to come up at some point.
There you go.
So I had to ask this. I had to ask someone at the Big Ten this, whether when they talk about the first tiebreaker being head-to-head between the teams, whether it means like when you look at Minnesota and Michigan got 7 points in the series. Minnesota got 5. That doesn't matter. They both got 2 wins, even though one was in overtime for Minnesota. So that counts as the same. That's a
split. Yeah.
Right. So
yeah. So like you said,
it's not the first tiebreaker. The second tiebreaker, the team with the best regular season winning percentage in all Big Ten games. So not
point percentage,
right? Winning percentage. So that treats an overtime win as the same as a regulation win.
I've got a headache already.
I don't. This is all very logical to me. I got it now.
I mean, I understand it, but if your standings are go by points and give a different amount of points for an overtime win as a regulation win, why doesn't your tiebreaker
7-5?
That's what I don't understand.
That makes sense to me. That makes sense to you, doesn't it, Viggs? I mean, if you're going to go off of points for the league standings,
and I had the same discussions last year about why it was winning percentage, not point percentage, and we all know that if it was point percentage, Gophers would have won the championship. So
Bob would have got an extra $30,000,
right?
He's really hoping he gets that $30,000 this year.
But just win both games.
Well, we do know that there will be changes to overtime and 3-on-3 and how it's applied to the pairwise, because we've always talked about how this OT thing only matters for the pairwise. Well, it turns out those 3-on-3 and shootout things matter for tiebreakers.
Well, yeah,
we missed out on a talking point all season that probably won't be there next year.
I just always think about Michigan Tech in terms of why the overtime, the loser point or loser 45% means something. Ask Michigan Tech how much it means, because they're in the conversation to be in, the tournament because they've lost so many games in overtime. When they've lost them in overtime.
Game in the system. It's weird. It's college hockey. We expect things to go a little sideways from time to time.
Embrace the weird, right?
Yeah, embrace it. It's not weird. It's college hockey.
Sure.
It's just like those wild ads we've all been seeing in Minnesota.
I don't know. It is goofy. I still miss some other pieces of the pairwise that used to be there. Like, my favorite was always, how are you playing now? The last 16 games. I always kind of liked that being part of it.
I always saw why they got rid of that, because, I mean,
who do you play the last 16 games?
Yeah, why? Exactly. It's the conference dictates when you play what teams, and just because you got an easy schedule down the stretch, why should that benefit you? I mean, I had that problem, I guess, with that part of it.
Yeah, and then you had Bob talking about he doesn't really like the 3-on-3 and at least how it affects pairwise. He's like, regulation over, pairwise over. That's how Bob. I mean, was he saying that on his radio show or
his radio show? Yeah. And the other thing that's happened in Minnesota here is the last 5 weeks, or this will be the 5th week in a row, they're playing a team coming off a bye. Which whoever created the schedule for the Big Ten has apparently done them a favor by doing this, because every Friday night the team has come out rusty that they're playing against. But that's not what you'd expect. You'd expect them to come out fresher. But that's interesting.
Yeah, that shouldn't be allowed to happen.
No, it's amazing that no one discovered that when they were doing it either. It's like,
there's a lot of things the Big Ten misses. I mean, we've seen it all since it began, Viggs.
Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with Minnesota. We had a comment in here about which forward is going to get pulled out of the lineup. It's going to be interesting. I don't think it'll be Braz. I don't think it'll be Nevers or Bros or Nevers, because those two have shown the ability to play on the power play. So I think their spots are pretty safe. So we'll think maybe it's Schmidt and Sorensen that get out. I've really liked the Sorensen, Perbix, Schmidt line as kind of an energy line for the Gophers the last couple of weeks, but I don't know if they're going to be able to keep that line together as they get everybody back healthy, especially if Jackson Nelson decides that he can play this week. He's coming off a broken ankle and has been skating for a little while, but hasn't been 100%. So I think that'll be interesting to see if he gets in the lineup. And then if Carl Fish sticks in the lineup, he's been a bright spot for Minnesota. And I think he's competing with Stoddicker and Brinkman for ice time in that kind of role.
Is it something where they might play 7 defensemen, Viggs, and keep Fish in?
Well, it's always more damaging to your lineup to lose one of your 6 defensemen than it is to lose one of your 12 forwards, because it's very helpful to have those D, especially if a D takes a penalty. It's hard to change up your lineup there. So maybe we'll see those 70 and Rossini's done a nice job. I don't think he'll make the lineup though.
No, I don't think he will either. Well, we'll just have to wait and see. It's coming up soon. I'm looking forward to it. Todd, again, you're like the record holder for being on the GPL podcast.
We'll have to get you a jacket, smoking room.
Oh, awesome. I take that as a badge of honor, honestly. I mean, that's like, thank you guys for having me.
Well, I'm glad we found you and started getting you on the podcast. So it's great to have your perspective. And, I see, comments in the beginning, they were saying that that's a Badger fan I like. Okay, maybe you're a Badger fan in your youth. And obviously, you're still
in my youth.
You're a fan. I mean, if you weren't a fan of the team, you probably wouldn't be working.
I can say that. I mean, I grew up watching that team because that's what I had to watch. Yeah, I mean that was it, right?
But we really appreciate you coming on. We're gonna keep bringing you on for like ever and ever and ever. So that's all. That's the good thing. Viggs, you got any last things for the podcast here for us?
No, let's get to the weekend. I'm ready.
Let's get to the weekend. You are correct. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the GPL podcast. I want to thank Todd for once again coming on. We'll be back next week to recap the Badger series. And depending on where Minnesota finishes, we'll preview the next weekend or we'll preview something. For those of you currently watching, stay tuned for some overtime. For the rest of you, we'll get you next week on the GPL podcast. All right. All right, Viggs. I heard you opening it, so let's isolate you here.
I almost didn't make it because I got a 4-pack of Crowlers.
Next time, mute before you get up and jump because it's like thump.
Showing the effort. Okay. I thought you did that automatically.
No,
I had to get out there. This is Town Hall Brewery, Masala Mama, one of the original IPAs around. Town Hall's been around since 97. And because I'm terrible at drinking or pouring Crowlers, you got to take a sip first.
Very nice.
Oh, delicious. Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's the pour.
But it's barrel age week at Town Hall. So if you are around Minneapolis this week, I highly recommend stopping by Town Hall because they have some great barrel-aged beers. They are one of the original breweries to start putting beer in barrels. So they make something called Zarjak, which is an Imperial Russian Stout put in Jack Daniel's barrels. And they thought, well, that's a good idea. So they're one of the originals in doing it. And their IPA is delicious as well.
Todd Demand. That's from Mote, Taylor Kearns.
Yeah,
thank you.
You're popular with our fans here,
which probably annoys some Wisconsin fans. But
come on, people! That's it.
Why would it annoy Wisconsin fans?
I mean, we have more in common than we disagree with. I mean,
totally.
As Wisconsinites and Minnesotans, and I think we need to embrace that at some levels, right?
I mean, when it comes down to a national championship, we're going to hate you guys as much as anything.
Right.
But I really think when you have level-headed fans, it really comes down to being a fan of college hockey.
Yeah. And we need more of those. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, because we saw, coming up on a decade ago where college hockey didn't become the priority anymore, right? It became every school for itself. And maybe it was going to happen regardless, or whoever was in charge, but here we are.
The breakup of the leagues when the Big Ten formed was frightening to read about. Schlossman did a great job breaking down how the presidents and ADs just got really cutthroat with each other and started cutting people out. Yeah.
I mean, there had been, from everything I had heard, the bigger schools were so disenchanted with how small time the WCHA was run in the McLeod era, especially those late years where, you had the marquee postseason event, which was great. Everyone loved that, but it was the day-to-day, the week-to-week, regular season kind of stuff that got everyone from the bigger schools, for everything I ever heard, that annoyed them, just how there wasn't a big picture thought process to anything. And, that's what I think they were hoping was going to be the draw of the Big Ten, was that, okay, here's a group that knows how to look at things in a big way. But need a little bit more seasoning on that, I think, in a very sports specific way that isn't done in a multi-sport conference.
We did discover this week, though. Okay, if you do a Google search for Big Ten hockey standings, it brings you to one page on the Big Ten site with inaccurate numbers. But then if you just click standings, it brings you to another page that shows the correct standings. But it is stuff like that.
Yeah.
That it just makes it seem like a bush league, right, Viggs?
Yeah. It's amazing to me that the Big Ten doesn't recognize this and hire a Josh Fenton type person to at least give them some standing to fight with. And it just shows that it's an afterthought.
Well, I think they thought that was, what Red Berenson was going to be in some way, was someone with some cachet, right? But
he has cachet, but he doesn't have the time or the energy or the knowledge to do like what Dan Henning did for CCHA and building that website, and building that following.
Yeah, it's. I think there's you're playing with the Red Berenson thing. They were playing to the coaches, trying to make them a happier group as opposed to trying to make the fan base happier. Which, not to say you can't do both of those. Maybe not necessarily one higher, but there's some fan engagement that needs to happen from their perspective.
Well, okay, I saw this a little while ago because remember we had this come up. Did you get the record book corrected for the Gophers Wisconsin total games after the last podcast?
I don't know where we left that. I don't know. I will ask Deutsch when I see him.
Because I see the notes for the border battle, and for Deutsch says this is game 301, which I think we decided this is going to be game 302, right?
Could be.
So I don't think we did get it corrected. I don't think we did get it corrected. That was a late night. I was drinking. Todd, you obviously were not. So I blame you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're probably right. Yeah.
You're the professional. I'm just the amateur over here.
I'll take my couple years old copy of the Gopher Media Guide, the Deutsch that's here, and just
He might be able to get you a new one. They did print one.
I haven't gotten a new one yet.
I've got mine over here somewhere.
Oh.
I'm not
Is there
allowed
at least
to show
a PDF
you.
of it? Can we get a PDF of it?
I'm not allowed to show you the cover though. There's a goaltender on there who's no longer.
Oh, it's LaFontaine.
And then the back cover is blank because why not?
Oh,
It's
it's
COVID,
LaFontaine.
so
That's okay. Gopher Hockey History says it's 303 and 304 this weekend.
I think that could be right because I feel like
I think that's what we ended up with. Yes,
I thought we identified that Wisconsin had a game in their records that Minnesota didn't have, and Minnesota had a game in their records that Wisconsin didn't have. So I think that's what we landed on.
Could be.
It's a long time ago. I'm gonna have to go back into the archives.
Oh boy, here we go.
See how late of a night we get.
Todd's pick for Big Ten. Well, let's just say playoff. I mean,
well, no, he can pick the regular season too. Does he think Notre Dame steals a point or two here? And
I can see how this is like. I've been thinking about this. I think Notre Dame's gonna be right in there, and so I like. Do they get a game to overtime and win a 3-on-3, which they tend to do? Game goes to overtime. Even though Michigan has all those stars, I'll take Notre Dame just from what they've done.
Yeah, I know.
I feel like I don't know if it's going out on a limb to take Minnesota, but I feel like that would be like, so yes, I see Notre Dame getting points. So haven't worked out the tiebreakers though. If it's 6-4, Michigan still has it, correct? I
think it's a split over there. It's going to be.
But what happens if Notre Dame wins one of those games in overtime and gets the regulation win?
For tiebreaker purposes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Adding things into my brain here that
exactly. I just want to get you good and confused for the drive. Just got to give you things to think about on that drive. So
yeah. Well, I'm driving up with Brian Posick tomorrow, so we've got enough to talk about in my heavily damaged vehicle. I don't know if you guys heard about this. I was hit from behind at stopped at a stoplight a few weeks ago, and so my bumper is not looking great. But so if you see a car that looks pretty dinged up around Mariucci, that's probably me.
Did you get a Sean's number?
Vigo for the win right there.
Coming in hot, yeah.
Overtime. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Wow.
Keep her moving. Keep her moving.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Brever keeps wanting. They're not going to play at LeBon full time.
No.
Not going to happen, Brever.
No. Zero conversations.
I was doing some sleuthing on finances for college hockey athletics. Mm-hmm. I'm amazed that Wisconsin is still at the top of the NCAA for revenue. Like it's amazing to me. Like they're right there every year, even with the decline in attendance and things. I think that's got to be donations a little bit. And
some of it is, and I mean, they still get the by paid ticket numbers. Mm-hmm. It's still a sizable number for college hockey, right? I mean, we compare it to the days of 15,000. Yeah, it's not there anymore, but still averaging 9,000 whatever they do, even though that's purely paid attendance and not the number that's in the building. That's still who's paying for tickets. Mm-hmm. And the majority of them. I know there are some giveaways and the students pay less, but so that's still revenue coming in. Yeah, that's there's still a decent chunk of that.
I want to say at 18-19 they were first at like 6.2 million.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1920 they were second at 5.3 million. That's still pretty good money coming in.
Yeah,
and they don't have outrageous ticket prices either, Viggs. $24.
They have that nice big arena.
Yeah, they've got they've got tickets to sell, and I talking to some people at games this season. I wish they would just close off the third deck unless they can sell it for when Minnesota's there.
Border battle,
yeah, because it's. It will look a lot better if you put the fans that are there into the first two levels. So
well, it's interesting for the playoffs at Mariucci. They're opening up 2 more sections for the students.
I saw that.
Which, hopefully there's not games next weekend, but
yeah,
you get into a Big Ten semifinal or a Big Ten championship. That could be a lot of students in those games, Viggs.
And I'm thinking going forward, it's in their best interest to try to do that next year.
Ooh, that'll be tough to get rid of those season ticket holders, though. There's a lot of people you see.
Just pack everybody in. There's plenty of seats available. I think it would help the atmosphere in the building. It would make the seats they do sell more valuable. I mean, you're going to have those seats available for the holiday break. Probably, maybe you'll have games where you try to focus selling single game seats or something like that for those. But I think the atmosphere is really good when the students show up, and they've showed up for football and hockey the last 2 years.
Corey's right, though. They've already sent out renewals.
The U has done a lot of funny things with ticketing and stuff in the past, so I don't think it's too late.
Yes,
they're not going to kick them out of their seats. They're going to move them into better seats.
Move them a section over each way.
Yeah. Just pack everybody in. Pay the same price. Get closer to the middle of the rink.
Because really, with that many students, that kind of rivals Kohl Center when they had 3 decks going up. It would be about just as many kids, Viggs.
Yeah, probably. And I've been telling anyone who will listen here that they need to just let students in for free here. I mean, that's the atmosphere in this building right now in the Kohl Center. When students are there and making noise, and they've done a really good job of that with volleyball. I don't know what volleyball here is doing in terms of how much they charge or whether they charge, but they give them food, they do all this stuff, they try and bring them in, have that atmosphere. And if they could do that for hockey, that would change an awful lot. I think it doesn't change the on ice product. Obviously that is what it is. But if you can have the student section creating some more buzz in the building, that's a big win for them. And
you're building maybe lifelong fans, because I know there's a lot of people my age who were students back in the day and going to games as students, and that's why they're fans now.
And then when they graduate, you get them in for the first 5 years after graduation, you pay a significantly less amount of money because we know you've got student loans to pay and everything, but we want to keep you around and get you into being a 20, 30 year season ticket holder.
Yeah. My 2 big plans for rebuilding the fan base are to get more students in for each game, try to convert those fans into young alumni season ticket holders at a discounted rate, and then try to do lots of youth hockey kid tickets and try to get those parents and kids into the building as much as you can, almost at whatever price. Because in Minnesota, kids who play hockey, they're going to be hockey fans. So you're better off if they follow your program than the Wild. So create a connection there for them and college hockey. And
before St. Thomas does it for you.
Well, St. Thomas, once they find a site for their rink, well, I wish them luck
not on
that.
A golf course now, apparently.
Yeah, that was a pretty quick no.
It was.
I was like Dr. Evil. How about no?
How about no? But seriously, I mean, if they get a decent arena, all of a sudden Friday nights you got two teams in town.
It's going to be different. I don't think St. Thomas is ever going to be Minnesota, but they have a potential to be like a Notre Dame. That's what they aspire to be, at least for hockey. Probably not for football.
Wow, we got 40 people watching us live tonight.
Todd, bringing it in. This might be a record overtime.
Wow.
Well, I don't know about distance. Yeah, I can't go super late. Jeez. Man, we need Vig's kids to grow up so we can start bringing the show a little earlier.
Yeah, as they grow up, though, their ice time might get later. So we'll see. We'll see how that works out.
True. And I'm an empty nester, so I can just basically do this at any time.
Yep, Todd, you're stuck with this 9:30 slot. I hope.
All right. No, I'll just have to start planning it better and take an afternoon nap or something like that, because 6:15 still happens in the morning. So
yeah, I usually do take a nap. I didn't get my nap in today. Yeah.
Todd, are you a coffee drinker? You're not a coffee drinker.
I was advised to give up caffeine a few years ago, and so I'm not. I cut it off cold turkey about 5 years ago now. So
there you go. Nothing wrong with that.
A lot of water, a lot of Sprite is as hard as I get.
I've been drinking a lot of water here too.
Yeah.
Let me see. Steve wants us to go to 1 a.m. No,
Steve.
No.
Another Dr. Evil. How about no? It's gonna be the phrase here.
It's 1 a.m. somewhere, right? I mean,
I know I saw Jared. He was watching from Daytona
Florida.
Beach.
Yeah.
So nice to have him join us.
We'll maybe make it 1 o'clock Daytona Beach time. Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see if we have to go in the archives and start looking at.
Well, I'm hoping to be on vacation for my birthday next year, and I might try to tune in from vacation.
Remote,
and it would hopefully be 2 hours, not 1 hour in front. 2 hours.
The Caribbean.
It sounds like
that Caribbean.
Yes. That's what I'm hoping to do.
Like Playa de Camba? I don't know. I don't know my Caribbean geography very well.
I'm guessing it wouldn't be the Maritimes, like the Canadian. Is it
I'm thinking Aruba, I'm thinking Aruba right now.
So, is this going to be a 5 birthday?
It is. Turned 50 this year.
5-0.
Or maybe you could just do the podcast and I'll just be on vacation.
Well, once I figure out this video thing, maybe once I can figure out how to use the StreamYard and the software you sent me, this OBS Studio.
I think there is a potential in that software.
Okay. I was getting something with Camo Studio. Todd, we've really grown our technological roots this year. I'm trying to find a way to use my iPhone camera instead of my laptop camera, which is not very good. And I know the technology is there because I can plug in my phone to these apps and get the video happening on my computer. I just haven't figured out how to use it with StreamYard yet. So someday you'll be able to see me in 720 or 1080.
Well, the funny thing is that
4K.
We're broadcasting in 720, but if your camera is like at least like 1080, it's gonna, like, mine is 1080, but we're still broadcasting, but mine's much sharper. But I bought a Logitech 900 something to use because the webcam on my old, I should have a Apple monitor that had just an old crappy webcam in it. The 30 USB camera, no.
You know where I spend my free money. It's bourbon, it's beer. It's not going to be on a USB camera. Although I did look at one.
My feelings on it is nobody needs to see me that clearly. Let's just be honest. Nobody needs that in their lives. I'm not an HD or 4K person.
Yeah, we could do HD, but we'd have to have the professional plan.
Ooh.
And that's like $50 a month.
Not until we get a few more sponsors.
Yeah, we would need like a full ton more sponsors. And that, buy Vigo webcam.
I'm gonna make this work, Eric. I'm gonna make this thing work.
If you can get that to work, that is the best way, because you've got a built-in camera on these things that are fabulous.
Yep.
And you'll be sharper than me.
And you look great. You look great for 49.
Oh man, this is the end. But like I said, I spent like $8 on some software that fixes the focusing issue, because webcams want to just keep auto focusing, and I just got something to do so I would stay at kind of in an infinity focus instead of all this automated crap.
So Todd, what's it like been asking around about Tony's future at Wisconsin? Has Tony warmed up to your questioning yet, or McIntosh the AD over there? And
yeah, I talked to him a couple weeks ago, and he wasn't. He and the associate AD, who's the administrator of our hockey, weren't given anything. So that's where I was kind of looking through, trying to parse out anything they were saying. But McIntosh said something, we're going to evaluate end of the season. And so I came back at him and said, that doesn't rule anything out. Do you want to rule anything out? And that's where he said, no, I think I'm going to leave it at that. So that was okay.
Because at the end of Don's time, like when you ask Tom McGinnis and Mark Coyle about it, it's always, we'll evaluate at the end of the year, as opposed to, we believe in our coach and we'll evaluate at, as we do every year at the end.
They both said that they still have confidence and faith that Tony's the right coach. So, okay, that you can still say that. You can say that now, and still 3 weeks later, decide
what's his contract right now?
Where's he's got 4 years left after this,
because they renew it every year.
Yes,
right.
So they're just adding another year on the end every year.
Right, that's what they do. That their standard operating procedure is, unless you have a terrible year, they give them a bonus or add a year onto the end.
Question though. Have you looked at the contract to see if the buyout has changed at all, like the language? Because
it has not. Nothing in the language has changed from the last time we got it was last summer compared to the original. No, nothing on that has changed.
Because I knew something was up with Patino when his contract got extended, but the buyout terms changed every year. And you knew Coyle was just kind of running out the clock with him and saying, I'm not ready to pay you money to not coach, but at the same time, I'm not going to extend your buyout. Yeah. And you could see the dates on the contract signed between the AD and the president, and Patino's were like 2-3 weeks out, where Patino's like, I don't want to sign this. I don't want to sign this. Okay, I'm going to sign it. Fine.
He's $600,000 a year, so he's got $2.4 million they'd have to buy out, or come to some agreement on that after this year if they want to get to him. But I see Eric has a question there about that one.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think that might be maybe an assistant.
He might be a better fit in the NHL though.
No, and that's he's got a lot of people he's played with over the years and that he knows pretty well that are in pretty high up situations in the NHL. I mean, his sister is a AGM with Vancouver now, so
a head coaching role, maybe not, but
no. I mean, Scott Mellenby is probably going to be a GM somewhere, and I think they're I don't know how close they are. They're fairly close. So I think there would be those kind of options out there for him. But he and his wife just built a house here. they are, I think they want to be somewhere for a while. And this was the place to do that. And
you can always go back to television too. I'm pretty sure he was the sideline reporter for either the 2002 or 2003 national championship when the Gophers won. I think
he talked about, I forget the specifics, but it was right after he retired. He was doing a ESPN game, so it must have been an NHL game. He didn't really know what he was doing. He had the earpiece in and microphone, and told him, "All right, go down to the wing locker room. You're interviewing whoever it was." He's like, "All right, how do I do that?" Just ask him questions. Ask him about anything. All right. So
you've been interviewed 1,000 times. You should know how it goes.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, he first time is like off the cuff, just went out.
And it was, Ian Bowie. It was 2002 when he was the main sideline reporter at the XL Energy Center when the Gophers won it after so many years. Bet you he'd love that. They could go on 34. Why? No, we don't want them to go. The Badgers need to be good, folks. That helps the Big Ten. Having the Badgers and Michigan State struggle so much. I thought Michigan State would be, I think I've been more disappointed with them than anybody.
Yeah.
When they formed the Big Ten, Michigan was down, Wisconsin was down, Michigan State was, and I really thought they'd be better. It's just that is the big, you're talking about the Badgers. I'm just Michigan State is more of a disappointment for me. Yeah, they're not going to be a top echelon team, but like you said, they've always been that solid team. They're in the middle. They get up top once in a while, but they're not just bottom dwellers like they've been here.
Yeah, and I don't know where, what's the next step. What kind of, if they decide they have to go away from Cole, what kind of coach are you looking for that's going to be the right fit for that kind of program? Like we're talking about, if you're not going to be able to, you're not going to out Michigan, you have to be something different.
And they had legendary coaches too.
Yeah.
And boy,
I mean, like Todd was saying earlier, Michigan State needs to go like the Minnesota State route with their roster.
Yeah.
Because if you're a 20-year-old veteran of junior hockey and you get to choose between bus rides and chartered flights that's
a good point. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't just look at the revenues for Big Ten programs. I looked at the expenses too. And the only school from the Big Ten not in the top 10 for expenses is Ohio State, actually. Michigan State's in there. They are spending money on their players and their athletes. It's still a Big Ten experience. So if you get the right coach in there with the right mindset of how to build a roster that way, you're going to give fits to the Big Ten teams if you have that kind of roster. And you just got to figure out, you got to maybe grab the right international players like Minnesota State has done. And so, if you get a Mike Hastings like coach, like Eric Brever's saying here, maybe that's the path.
Ohio State,
I think he's got a nice gig down there in Mankato, though.
Yeah,
you don't have to grab Hastings, but like that kind of player, that kind of coach with that kind of philosophy, I think could still work in the Big Ten.
God, I heard what was the speculation this week that someone would go to the CCH? What was it?
Miami wants to leave.
And then NCHE was bringing Arizona State and Augustana? Be an uneven conference. And where's Augustana going to go?
Good question.
I mean,
I mean, the last schools are going to be gone. They're just eventually going to be gone.
If you're, one of the better teams in the NCHC and you lose a Miami, you've got to bring in a Miami, don't you? Like, I not saying.
How about a Mankato?
I mean, but Mankato is going to be a team you got to worry about.
Well,
how many of
the easy life right now too.
Are worrying about Miami year to year when they come in. Which is why Miami has to get out of that league. I mean,
but Mankato, maybe they want to say, okay, it's time to play with the big boys. Because I don't think they're doing themselves any favors currently in their conference.
I think they're doing okay.
They're doing okay, but
they're living a cash cow lifestyle in Minnesota State right now.
And yeah, they're the college basketball mid-major equivalent, right? I mean, you're a team that is going to get to the NCAAs every year. That becomes the media darling when you do, and if you ever get to a Frozen Four again, it's like,
but the thing
to figure out where they are from, and
I don't think there's any stomach though in Mankato to spend at the levels that the top 20 teams are spending. I think Mankato is like 35th in expenses in college hockey.
Right.
And they're doing just fine for being 35th in expenses. I think that's sustainable. We've seen what happens at St. Cloud. Look at St. Cloud, though. They tried to spend above their means, and now that institution is in shambles. They cut their football program. They've cut other programs. Their enrollment's down. St. Cloud tried to keep up with North Dakota and Denver, and they are struggling. You got to spend within your means. And so if you're a town that can support more, sure, it works, but it doesn't make sense for them to live above their means. As much as their program's success maybe suggests
which is why, everyone made fun of the whole like-minded schools term back in the day. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of legitimacy to that idea. I mean, that's a real thing, because think about the old WCHA and why Wisconsin, Minnesota didn't fit with Michigan Tech. Just in terms of what they were willing to spend. There's always this, I always go back to the bigger schools wanted to put in the video cameras over the nets when video replay was very new, right? Spend the money. It's going to be a couple grand, whatever, 10 grand, whatever it was ended up being, because you have to get the cameras and the replay system. Well, the small schools didn't want to do it because they didn't have that in their budget. Mm-hmm. And that was the gap between those schools. And, it's a lot different now. It's, there's something to be said for dividing people up by what they're willing to dish out in terms of their budget.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little easier now. You get this great iPhone camera, and if you mounted that over the goal, that would probably be sufficient.
Sure. No,
if you figured out how to use this damn OBS studio thing, I'm sure you could make it work for video review, and you could have your director of official going back and forth on the wheel. But, it's times have changed for that kind of stuff. You look at the CCHA now, the video is pretty good for most of their rinks, I think, from what I've seen on Flow TV. So times have changed a little bit there, but
because that became more of a palatable expense when you have to sell yourself as a entity, as a league, as this new conference. You need to show yourself out there that, hey, we're not just, some third-rate group that doesn't really care about things.
Our stream is going to be better than the Youngstown Phantoms. Trust us.
Yeah. Well, Vigs, Big Ten, a lot of Big Ten contracts are coming up, and some of us said, hey, we wouldn't mind NBC picking up some of the stuff. Maybe we can get more on Peacock. Because that stream is outstanding. You watch those Notre Dame games on that stream. It is good. It is really good. And you're paying $4.99 a month for the entire service. I mean, so it goes up to $5. You're getting all the services. And you compare the stream
to the Bally's stream.
Night
and day.
Let's say the NCHC stream.
Okay.
Where it was like, what was it, $16 for a day or something like that.
Yeah. Or like,
and the only reason I got 2 days is because, the games with North Dakota were an hour earlier the next day. So when I bought it right before that first 7:00 game, 24 hours later, I still could watch the second game, but that's very expensive for a day. And the Peacock stream was just outstanding. I actually wasn't watching Bally's the night where they had their regular broadcast. Was crap. But
well, I do think schools like Notre Dame, anybody watching their games on Peacock is kind of like a bonus to them. Whereas like at the NCHC,
correct,
that's their big time sport. Like they're trying to make money off of that service. So that's kind of the big difference there, I think, between the two. I think the Big Ten maybe is somewhere in between. I don't know why they make it as expensive as they do for some of the BTN Plus stuff. Maybe it's to help subsidize
but could it change
some of these
contracts, though? I mean, if NBC jumps in some of the more Big Ten, because right now it's a lot of ABC or ESPN or whatever it is. Could some of that change?
Yeah, I mean, because Fox owns 51% of BTN, right? And so there's always going to be, I mean, that's going to be the platform, I think, for a lot of their streaming, for better or for worse, usually for worse, and a lot of the times I've seen. But yeah, there's just so many different like bad streaming setups that really drag down a lot of the other ones.
Anchorage is doing it 15 years ago pretty darn good.
I don't know about pretty darn good, but they were innovators.
Compared to some of the streams today, it wasn't bad, Viggs.
It wasn't bad compared to
how much our internet speeds were back then, too. I give them a lot of credit because it was pretty darn good compared to some of those things. And, Vonner's like, Notre Dame produces it and Peacock doesn't. That's just on the network, but still.
But it's still in that service.
The announcers weren't that great, but
the
video quality
Peacock level of service for the stream quality.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a platform that they're using.
It's like anything else too. You have to have good quality going in to have good quality coming out on the viewer side. You put garbage in on that side, it's all going to look terrible on the viewer side. So
the scoreboard is not going anywhere.
Sound system, maybe.
Sound systems always needed an upgrade,
but it might be on the agenda. And Todd, you'll be happy to hear 2 years the rink will be smaller. So it'll be one more thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Jess Myers will be like, so you're going from your hybrid rink to an Olympic rink or an NHL rink.
But so smaller, is there a number decided for width
yet?
It's
somewhere around 90 feet.
91 or 92, I can't remember.
Yep.
It's like Kohl Center.
Yep. But they're going to do
better sight lines.
Kohl Center is 97. LeBon is 91.
Okay, well, closer to LeBon then.
Yes.
Yeah.
But with sight lines, so you can still see the ice.
Yeah.
But they'll do Mariucci first. They'll set it up, the ice plant, so that they can put Ritter on that ice plant the next year. But they'll have two separate ice plants for a year. So Ritter will have its own ice throughout the summer, so they still have somewhere they can do stuff while they're constructing. And I've heard that they're throwing about stuff about changing some seating things, maybe doing some exclusive clubby type sections to change the seating configuration so it's not 10,000 seats.
Gosh, I'd love it if they put the students on the glass too. Ugh.
I don't know about
just
that.
Look at Penn State, all the kids with their signs down there. Just I've never understood that. They're always worried about, oh, don't pound on the glass. Don't pound on the, it's just relax. Who knows? I would love to see him on the glass. That's just me.
Although I've seen that the reason why they probably don't want them is because, like, if you look at the glass in front of the student section at the Kohl Center, it is pretty significantly bent inward toward the ice because of so much.
Well, at Mariucci, the stuff they have on the glass, it doesn't come back towards the students at all. Like, there's no shock absorbers that way. Yeah. So if you hit the glass, it doesn't give it all.
That is true.
Only gives coming
the
from the
springs coming towards you.
Yep.
And they are very solid.
They're very solid.
They are.
So if you're a fan and you try to jump on the glass and you expect any give, there's going to be no give. It's going to hurt.
But they are spring loaded and they move a good 1.5 to 2 inches.
Yeah, so don't have your beer right next to the glass.
Yeah, don't set it on there.
There was that one Detroit Red Wing game where Dylan Larkin accidentally jumped into the glass during warm-ups or something and spilled a guy's beer. And there's video of him going back to the bench and like talking to the guys like, can you make sure to get him 2 more beers? Because I feel bad about that. I was just joking around and
take some money out of my
locker,
out of my pocket or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. He's good for it.
As long as they didn't move section 1. Boy, Brever is right on the glass there. He's not on the glass, but he's a couple rows up. That might be a good area to put your little special club section, wouldn't it be, Viggs?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of good opportunities, especially since they're going to dig down. You know, it's a chance to put like ice level suite type things in, like little dugout suites.
And that's where it would be because, you know, the Zamboni and stuff on the other hand and students.
Yeah, you're going to have to upgrade. You're going to have to get dugout suites.
Corners seem like a good place.
Come on, you can pony up for those nice.
Use that St. Cloud State adjunct faculty pay to get you in there. As long as he doesn't have to defend New Prague in the St. Louis Park scandal. Do you know anything about that?
Oh, what is going on?
I saw something on Twitter.
It's complicated. That's all I know. Racial tensions are abound in the Twin Cities these days. So,
New Prague. Any word why they moved the senior ceremony? They did? I didn't even know that.
I didn't know that, but I know that the coaches hate doing it before the game because the players get emotional and it kind of slows everything down and it keeps them out of their rhythm. So I know I've heard coaches in the past talk about that, how they don't like it before the game because of that thing that happens.
Look, emotions. Brever's ready to sue if they take his seats away. Oh boy, damn lawyers! Just playing with you, Eric. But that is a good spot to put it, Viggs.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, the ticket offices are technically behind them, but that's quite a ways in. I'm not sure how the building is over on that side or how it's built.
Yeah.
I mean, on the Zamboni side, you know, we'll go, a lot of times I'm underneath the students and I'll go grab, there's a lot of storage areas and I grab, you know, some buckets for sitting on directly under them. And then they've got some other things, but I'm not sure what's on the ticket office side.
I feel like it's not structural. Like, I feel like they could dig out some concrete and do some things. And that's probably their best opportunity to do that. Because, Todd, you've been covering what's happening to Camp Randall. Like, they are making some changes to how to sell seats there. And that's not usually a building that's had problems selling tickets.
No, but it's slowly, like, falling off. Right. And
college sports.
Yeah, right. It's tougher, and especially it's tougher to get people to spend that much money to go sit on a metal bleacher for 4 hours plus with no beer sales. Which is something that may be changing, but don't hold your breath.
Yeah, I remember.
There's
remember
a new chancellor coming in. So
remember Viggs how sell beer. They'll be able to fill Mariucci. Sell beer. It's not the reason, folks.
No,
and
it's a
almost
nice
like a
thing
reason for some people not to come.
Well, yeah.
Some people are like,
Oh, boy.
I definitely don't want to come now.
But yeah, they figured they could sell.
Hold on. It's dirt under Section 1, and footings would not work under Section 1. There you go, brother.
Section 1's safe.
Section 1 is safe. That's from
somebody who knows.
It's from Craig Floor. Come on.
An insider. The insider.
So he is. Nobody knows better than Craig Floor.
You should know, yeah.
Oh, Eric's already celebrating. He's good. So they're not cleared. I mean, I guess the tickets only go so far underneath those sections. Someday we're going to get Craig Floor on this podcast.
Someday we'll get Brian Deutsch.
Craig Floor probably has so many stories, but he can't tell until he's no longer working there. Yeah, I've always kind of wondered what's underneath over there, but they'd have to find a different area, maybe. Can't really fit them on the. I don't know, but they have to plan for it now, Viggs. They can't just say, "Oh, we're gonna."
Well, when they redo the rink size, that's the perfect time to make any changes that they're talking about doing. And I know they've been talking about what could they do. So I think it's obviously clear that 10,000 seats is maybe too many. As much as people want to say, oh, if this program's winning and you sell beer, people will come. I just don't know anymore in this market. That's only going to get tougher. I mean, the Wild are there and they are going to be the premier thing. So
they could always, like you said, Eric, bro, you could always do club type of seating.
Yeah.
Like the first few rows around.
I think in the corners, because the corners are going to have to get reconfigured anyway, right?
Yep. Because the radius is going to change. So it's going to be tighter corners.
That seems like the place where you could, send a couple rows back and make in the corners club spaces in all four corners.
Well, here's one thing you could do. You could have two corners be adult corner sections, and two corners be student sections. I mean, might have some underage drinking problems in those sections, but maybe if you're a loyal student,
a couple rows of kids standing on the glass.
Yeah, I mean that would be interesting. You have like a little
stand the whole game anyway.
Little mosh pit, little slant to the seats, and
the only time they ever sit is during the period breaks and before the game.
Yeah,
they're standing the whole game.
Gosh, we should work for. Was it?
They can't afford us, Viggs.
Yeah, probably not. I can't even get
no budget.
I can't even get my iPhone working as a webcam. Is it GL? Who's the JLG or whatever? Who's the big architect for rinks?
Oh, that may be it. Yeah, J something.
Craig Floor. Who's the architects? Tell us.
There's a J in there and a G, I think. But they seem to land all the contracts right now for rink stuff. Somehow. Lowest bidder, I don't think so.
There is a renovation project starting at the Kohl Center in the spring after this school year, I believe. Building a structure over the loading dock that'll have new offices, new weight training, nutrition. JLG, there it is. And I was asking whether that was an opportunity to, throw $1 million or whatever it would take to narrow the rink in the Kohl Center to what they want it to be, which would be probably matching LeBron 90 or 91.
Which would fix the sight lines too.
Well, for a lot of it, yeah. And I was told that they it was mentioned, but nothing really ever came of it as part of this, which, it seemed like you're working on the building. This is an easy time to just cover these costs in this bigger project, and no one would really notice it. But
seems like for these departments with budgets of 150, 200 million, $1 million in 1 year to change that wouldn't be.
I think they want people who want to see this happen kick in the money to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's what they've been trying to do at Minnesota for a decade, and it's not happened. They got the Nanny family to step forward for the locker room space and be the lead donor. They got the Peltier family to step up and do some things around the rink, but they could not get another donor to step forward and do the rink shrink stuff. So they're going to use their commercial paper money, I think, to do that.
How much of that had to do with the Don?
Well, the Don's gone and the money's not there.
For a long time, a lot of it was.
But that's just like the beer thing. It's just an excuse not to to take action. We see more people these days on social media hate watch. Be like, oh my gosh, the Gophers are down 3-0 to Penn State. I'm going to log on to Twitter. I'm going to log on to Facebook and start posting. I'm going to log on to GPL. I didn't post the other night when they were in control of the game from the drop of the puck, but there are a lot of people out there who that's what gets them going is to hate watch.
Facebook. Oh my gosh! Whenever you go back and look at the first period 3-0 Penn State post by University of Minnesota, and I guarantee you, it is ugly. But the responses, ugly.
I feel like that's a story there about social media managers who run these accounts and just the thick skin and because I know Brian hates it. Brian Deutsch, he's like, this is thinning my hair. Social media has probably caused a little patchiness in certain areas of his head. It's stressful.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at toning it out, but I don't get very much.
Yeah, but I'd be all for the Kohl Center shrinking the rink a little bit. It won't help if you're up in the third deck for the ends where you can kind of see the goal, but on the edges.
So Todd, what's going to happen with these players who are going to play in that new rink? With how many commitments does Wisconsin hockey have now? 34?
You want the current number?
Yeah, what is it? Is it 34? I thought I looked at this the other day, but I wasn't.
It's 30 something.
Yeah.
And now, I have them at 29, and that's including a lot of players who I think are just, okay, we just need to start crossing them off the list.
I don't cross anyone off the list until the commitment drops off a line chart. So that's kind of my rule for anyone out there who follows. Once they drop off a line chart.
One of these players, his last year was his last season of junior eligibility, so I don't think he's playing anymore. So probably can cross him off.
Okay, Viggs. Okay, is Lucious delayed because of the newest Gopher recruit?
A lot of people like to think that.
How does Dad feel about that?
Probably not very happy. But you know what? Third-party observer, probably the best thing for him would be to wait a year and play.
This is Cruz Lucious, correct?
Yeah.
There's 3 of them.
Would be to play a year in the USHL as a top-line player for somebody. I would hope he would find a spot like the Steel, who would, take advantage of his skill set. But if he ended up in Omaha, maybe then you'd be like, oh, we can find a spot for you. But it's in his best interest, I think, to play another year. Because if he comes in the Gopher lineup next year, he's fighting to get in the lineup. He is not a clear top 12 forward. And he's going to be maybe a third-round pick. And so, what evidence would he have to say he deserves to be in the lineup? I mean, he's going to be fighting with Sorensen, Schmidt, Strobel, for ice time.
And then I like his other comment. We got 29, but we haven't told 5 of them yet.
I always wonder kind of how that goes.
Brever's on his game tonight.
Like Nate Warner is a guy who's still committed to Minnesota, but he's played 4 junior games this year. So maybe he's going to come to Minnesota and be like a manager. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
If your health doesn't allow you to play junior hockey, maybe you still love hockey. Maybe there's a way for him to connect because he's got good ties to the family, at least.
Tell us about Logan Cooley. We talked about him a little bit last week. What was it, the next day? Or no, yeah, it was the next day.
Next day.
He committed. All of a sudden,
coaches found out on when the plane landed and their cell phones connected. Kid's a special talent. He's got elite speed. He's got this like super wide skating stance that's maybe not the most efficient, but it makes him super difficult to knock off the puck. And he's got like this catch radius where when pucks are within his stick length, he can somehow nab it and make a play. So it's going to be – that's a player you make room for.
How do you
Pino Niemi, I think, is still coming.
How do you say that?
Pino Niemi.
Oh, Jesus. Good luck.
Pretty sure that's right.
I'll take your word for it. I'll look at the line chart.
There are names I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure I've heard Pino Niemi a couple times on the hockey TV feeds because he looks like a hard player.
But does like I said, does Cooley, who wasn't committed, and typically we have guys committed for kind of years, a little bit in advance, Vigs, like I said, that could really screw up the Lucious thing.
But as I've talked about on this show many, many times, you cannot just take 18-year-olds and 18-and-a-half-year-olds and fill your roster with them. If you don't think a guy is ready, you're better off seeing him go play for Michigan or Michigan State or whatever, or St. Cloud or UMD, if they're not going to be a good fit in your lineup. Because the only thing that's going to happen is if they feel like they got in and they forced their way in and you weren't happy, it's just conflict. And you're going to have an unhappy player in your locker room who wanted to be there and now doesn't have the role they expected to play. And it's just going to create problems.
But the difference here is that he's got an older brother. It's just getting started. I want to play with my brother.
Who might also be unhappy.
No,
I
that's where I'm trying to lead this conversation.
Oh, okay.
I
don't understand what Chaz
we know that Dad's
happy about.
We know Dad that is just he built his own damn school. I mean,
there's a time where you have to let your kids forge their own path and figure it out for themselves and make their own decisions and be accountable for themselves. And especially if you're a first round NHL draft pick and you're playing Division I hockey, this stuff matters. Oh, yeah. You're not playing in an association or a charter school or whatever. This is different. Bob doesn't win, he gets replaced. Tony, if he doesn't win, he's going to get replaced. Coaches are playing players to win, not to soothe egos and like figure out connections and stuff. They want to win.
And when you talk about soothe egos, that's one of those things we were kind of hoping we would get away from because it happened too much with Lucia.
And I think when you see Lucious not play Saturday night, that's a coach who's saying, okay, you're not good to play Friday, you're definitely not playing Saturday. That's a coach who's drawn the line and said, and we'll see if you're ready next weekend. I don't know. You have an old school coach who says, oh, you're going to pull yourself out of lineup for this? Well, maybe you're not ready to play the next weekend either. I really think that's what's going on. No one's going to say that stuff on the record, but you can just tell the body language when Bob gets asked about this stuff that he's just like, don't want to talk about it, but he's 50-50.
Yeah. It's something you totally, you get that vibe. Something's not right.
Yeah. We'll address it. Like on Saturday, the radio pregame, he's like, what's the status with Lucious? He's like, he's out tonight. We'll address it next week. That doesn't sound like we'll evaluate it or it's under consideration. We're going to address it because it's something different than something surface level. There's something deeper there to figure out. I don't think WHL would be a good fit for him. I really don't. Like, you go to the WHL, you're going to play teams that their number one goal is to hurt you. And I don't think that's a good situation for him.
Although, that message doesn't always get through to players, and yet they still make that decision. Or the message sometimes gets through to them, but that's still where they end up because somebody, puts it in their head that you're going to be great there. It's going to be totally your style. If
that's the choice he makes, then Bob made the right choice. It just reinforces the decision from him. Even if he goes there and he's successful, if that's the mindset of the player, you have to build a team first culture somehow. And I think that's been hard for Bob the last 2-3 years to do. But this is a different situation. This is one of the guys that didn't commit to him, committed to Don, but still came in. I have to be right back. I'm out of beer.
It's all good, Biggs. Oh boy. God, there just wasn't. I mean, I don't know what the injury was, Todd, but there's just something that was weird about that whole Lucious thing last Friday night. That it just didn't sit well with me, and it was just odd. And then the way they talked about it, like you said, it just gave you that feeling, okay, something's not right here.
And you got to be careful talking about, injuries and what someone experiences themselves versus what is perceived to be experienced from other people. Right. And that's why I'm always get a little skittish about, blaming someone for saying they're hurt or, putting that on someone who's just, trying to, look out for their best interest. You would think. But when you're part of a team, you're expected to sacrifice something, right? That's part of the, what you sign up for.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
like I said, it's just something
tricky balance. The balance is what doesn't always look good.
Everyone's on the message boards and Twitter. What's going on? I'm like, he's injured. I'm like, okay, is he injured? I mean, what's happening here? I just got that feeling that just something wasn't right. And, and like, like Vig says, when a coach says some slightly different things, like, oh, he's injured. Or I think he even mentioned it was a foot thing. I mean, typically it would say they wouldn't tell it. Say it's a foot problem. So that was even another thing that was just kind of odd about it.
Yeah, unless you're trying, that makes it sound like you're trying to downplay it in your own thinking, right? Because most coaches wouldn't even come close to saying what the actual injury is.
So that's people like what they were posting on GPL. Well, something's going on. I'm like, something's not right here, and we'll see. And there's Vig's back.
I even can add myself back. Just kidding.
I know you aren't at me. You can pretty much do anything. So
wow.
I could probably kick you out too, Todd.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't want to do that though.
Okay. That's nice of you.
Still got to get you that smoking jacket though.
Vigs.
But it's got to be nice to see that Cooley Nyes thing maybe coming together, and
if Nyes stays,
sounds like he wants to. Sounds like Nyes and Faber both are guys who want to come back from things that I've heard from people in the hockey community.
That would be spectacular.
Even though Toronto might be interested in offering him a spot. So we'll see.
It would be spectacular. Bring it on. We'd love to see it. Go ahead.
By the way, Steve's asking, is Lucious a bust? I wouldn't define him as a bust. Disappointing, maybe, but he's not a bust. He's been pretty good. The 9-line worked with him on it.
I would agree with that. And the thing is, were people thinking Pitlick was a bust for the first half of the season? And all of a sudden, he just got it. And Lucious
Rose too.
Rose. I like Hugelin, man.
Todd, who's looking good for freshman for Wisconsin? Any bright spots? I want to flip this.
Yeah.
I want to flip the script a little bit because I mean, Minnesota's freshmen at the start of the year, it seemed like they were overwhelmed with just the game and the pressure and what to do with pucks to stop making turnovers.
Yeah,
and they finally figured that out.
There's been a lot of that throughout the season. I mean, for the Wisconsin freshmen.
Oh wait, no, hold on. Well, you got to click the button, Viggs. It's just solo.
Oh, sorry.
Next, is this a different one? This looks like it's similar, but it says something different.
Yep, this is a Saz double pills, strong Bohemian Pilsner, whatever that is.
Yeah, I have no idea.
It's kind of like a lager. It's a
I have no idea what
strong.
any of that means.
Okay, go ahead, Todd.
Kuhlman's has been the one that has, I think, he had a lot of expectations coming in, first round pick, all that stuff. As a defenseman, 18-year-old in the Big Ten, that's
tough.
Yeah, and so he was probably not quite ready for it at the start of the season, but there was a point where it just kind of, you could see it kind of was starting to click for him. He was able to, he wasn't as not afraid, but as worried about carrying the puck as he was earlier in the season. And that was something that kind of unlocked something for him. So he's been the one that's, you can see that there's, if he kind of keeps on this trajectory and picks up a little bit in the off season, he could be really good next year. I mean, they have to use him. He's their power play quarterback. They don't have another option. Their defense is so defensive oriented. They don't have very much at all in terms of guys that can run offensive mindsets back there.
And he didn't play much last year because of COVID,
right?
It wasn't injury or anything. It was just COVID stuff.
Yeah, the Alberta League was essentially shut down for most of the season. They played like 14 games total or something like that.
Yeah.
And
because that kind of happened
worse than that
to Middlestat. Like he was on Luke Middlestat, defenseman, was on the trajectory of being like, maybe a second or third round pick or something like that. And then COVID hit and he didn't play hardly at all. And he goes undrafted.
Yeah.
And he's got like 40 plus points in the USHL, looking like really solid development path. So it's just like guys like that, I think after their draft year, if they can play a year junior, can only help for most of those kids. It's just, can your coach convince them that that's in their best interest?
Yeah, he's playing here in Madison, so I haven't seen him in person yet, but I mean, everything I hear is that he's as good as advertised, and just needed the time to get back to playing regularly. Games. Yeah, it's just you play one here and there, and that last season was, you just throw it out for so many people, and it's just like it wasn't a real season.
Especially for Wisconsin winning the Big Ten. I mean, doesn't even really count, right?
Right.
Wow.
But I mean, when you're asking about freshmen, there haven't been a ton of guys that have been given big roles other than Kuhlman's.
Has anybody really developed this year? I mean, you were talking about this earlier. I mean, For Minnesota, I think like Fish really started playing this year and it made a difference. I don't know what I was expecting after his freshman year where he hardly played. And sometimes when you see guys like that at Minnesota, it's like they're always going to be depth, like Matt Denman. Like they brought Sam Rossini out of a desk job so that they didn't have to play Matt Denman. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, the development just hasn't been. There's nothing obvious there. I mean, there's no guys. Coleman's, like I was talking about, is the one that you could see it. There was some movement there.
Maddie, do you think of the kind of the guy who might just bail on the situation that they're currently in?
I don't think so. I haven't gotten that.
That would just be devastating.
It would, yeah. Now, if there's a coaching change, I think that opens up. I mean, especially with the transfer portal now, that opens up everything, right?
Yeah. Well, people have been speculating about that with Michigan too. Like, what happens if Mel's gone? Does Bill keep everybody? Because I think Bill would probably step into that job as long as he kept his email clean.
Yeah, right. But Matty D. St. Fall is in the second half. I mean, he's more aggressive for being a 5. What is he? 5'9", 5'10"? I don't even know anymore. He's 5'9". I think he had 1 goal at the break and he's got 10 now. So he's been really the only guy that's somewhat consistently scored in the second half for them. Carson Bantle has been better. He transferred from Michigan Tech after last year, and he missed a lot of last season with shoulder injuries, he picked up another shoulder injury, the other shoulder, in the exhibition game before the regular season started this year, and that set him back probably a month and a half, 2 months. And so it was well into the second half before he was really showing, okay, this is kind of the bigger body, can play out front and not be worried about my shoulders giving out kind of player that they thought he was going to be. But yeah, the rest of it is just kind of
like Donovan. Like I expected him to maybe take a jump this year. I know that a player like him was one of the reasons Mike Randolph got ran out of Duluth East. Is maybe ruining his path. I mean, it's hard to pin it just on one player, but
there hasn't been any lack of opportunity for him to
get better,
to do something. And it just hasn't been there. Jack Gorniak cry out for guys that are like needed USHL, needed time there instead of coming right from high school. And but you make those decisions based on what you feel like you need this coming season. As even though they have this,
when you have 34 kids in the pipeline,
depth of people in reserve in theory.
Did we determine some of those guys might be dead, Vigs?
Just cross them off then.
Just cross
them off. Some of those decisions have not been. History will not look kindly on them, I think.
Vigs, one guy I kind of wanted to talk about is Crookshank. Kind of a really slow start for him after being a pretty good scorer, but it seems like the last couple weeks he's impacted the game for the Gophers maybe more than he has the entire season.
He kind of feels like a player who's trying to fit in. Like
he's finally getting there.
Right. Like you're not going to get a lot of power play time. You're not going to be on a line that gets 25 minutes of ice time. So you have to figure out how to make your impact in smaller spurts or in different situations. And maybe instead of trying to create offense, just create momentum. I think that's so big for players who aren't scoring. It's like, don't focus so much about creating scoring chances. Create possession, create momentum, draw penalties, things like that.
Had a nice one-timer goal.
I
Take kind of what they need.
As we talk about, sometimes in overtime, stop trying to be the hero. Just step into the moment when it's there. Because if you play Gopher hockey the way Bob wants it played, there are going to be moments for you to create offense. You just can't have to force those moments to happen. You just have to let it.
Oops.
Yeah.
Is this my buddy there?
I was just gonna bring that up just to see. Has that been on a broadcast yet?
Pretty much every time. It'll probably be on
Birds of
Friday night on
Skaters?
ESPN. Yeah. ESPN. Is it on ESPN?
ESPNU Friday night. Are we getting Wibuchi again?
We get Clay, Matvick, and
I like Clay. So
is it Ben Holden? Maybe
no. Holden's calling the game Saturday with Fred Pletch.
Okay, I don't think they're here.
I can't remember he was coming to the cities. So,
so they made a party,
right?
It seems like they've been sending people to Minnesota, whereas the last couple weekends for Big Ten, we know that our guy has been calling from a studio.
Sean Ritchie. Yep.
Sean Ritchie. So he's playing. Right. He's Friday night.
Not
I think Ritchie was there with Booch earlier this season.
Yeah, but Clay was there at availability along with Patrick Royce.
Pat made a second appearance this year.
I know. Patrick wanted to talk to the Saskatchewan goalie and get updates on what he would be doing, and if he wasn't playing goalie and going to school, he'd probably be working on the farm. Pat, he's a farm boy, just like Pat grew up. So, good story there.
Does anyone remember this guy, Sam Gore?
The tennis guy?
Yeah. The tennis guy? Oh.
And it's good.
Oh, gosh. That Richland, isn't it? Sean Richland?
Sean Richland, yeah.
Richland, yeah.
Richie. Yeah.
Well, I think Craig Floor's been drinking because his typing has been terrible.
Scoutmaster.
The Sam Gore game. Wow. That was bad.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to blame him. First,
well, no, you can't blame him.
He shouldn't have been put in that position.
You don't put somebody in that kind of position. There's got to be a tape of that game somewhere. Who knows? Yeah. Bad typing. I'm going to just send you a link, Craig. Just join us. Just join us.
We've never done a 4-way.
Whoa. We did on Zoom because we had both Todd and Cappy on.
But that was Zoom. That was a little different. I haven't done a StreamYard 4-way. I got to imagine it's 4 boxes and totally different. But Charlie's been good. Charlie Beatty. He's a guy who could just step into a role when called upon. When
made a career.
Yeah. So he's been good. But he's got the tournament this weekend probably for high school girls. Imagine that's what's going on. That's keeping him busy. So good for him.
It's interesting. The girls' tournament's at the Axe, obviously. I was speaking with Mike Vindovic today, who's one of the main kind of network stats guys, stands right next to the announcer. He's going to be working the Wild game, but they're actually going to have to be – they can't be in the press box because the girls' games, but the game's in Canada, so they'll be calling the game from like the locker room or something like that this weekend. 9:00 game or something like that. So I take it. I'm not sure who the Wild are playing, but he was saying he'll be at the X, but they can't call from the regular broadcast because the girls' tournament's going on.
Todd, do you do any Wisconsin high school hockey stuff at all? I know Brody Dietz is playing for Hudson, and they're supposed to be pretty good this year.
Yeah, I've heard that. But no, I don't deal much with high school hockey. No,
you're out of that boat, huh?
No, and it's just,
it's the same time as regular hockey. I mean, whereas that's why you've taken kind of soccer during the off hockey months.
Well, and that's to be determined now too. So,
ooh,
yeah. I don't know what my off-season responsibilities.
They're going to send you to the World Cup in Qatar.
Yeah, right.
Is there a spring sport at Wisconsin that's worth coverage? Spring football?
Well, yeah. We've done a little bit with softball, but not a ton.
Baseball's obviously gone. Yeah.
And it's just, and this was the same reason why, a lot of people here make a big deal that Wisconsin doesn't have baseball and, why can't we bring this back? Well, when they did have a team here, there were 35 people at a lot of those games because they play next to the lake in March and April, and it's 20 degrees. So unless from what I heard, the days people would show up were the days that someone would put a keg in the back of their truck and back it up down the first baseline or one of the baselines. And that was,
whereas like Minnesota, they use the dome.
Right. You've got that option. And, you've got your own nice baseball facility too.
They have the baseball facilities, but when it's cold,
they play a number of games at US Bank now.
Yeah.
The Vikings stadium, which looks really weird when they play there. In the Metrodome, at least kind of looked like a baseball park.
That was designed a little better for a multi.
Yeah. US Bank's a little weird.
Yeah.
But when you start seeing games at Siebert Field, it's like the last 2 weeks of the year where it's actually maybe nice enough to enjoy the games.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a great deal. And it's like even when the playoffs start, like they've had a couple softball regionals at the softball stadium on campus, and it's kind of nice, but it's still kind of iffy.
Right.
And softball's kind of become a big thing for ESPN for broadcasting, at least.
Yeah. They broadcast a lot of it. They do.
Yeah. It's done well ratings wise too. Probably beating hockey.
Just had to bring us down, didn't you?
Well, wrestling and volleyball are right there with hockey, so it's
hockey is not a TV sport. It's just, when they say that the women's game had one of the biggest ratings in many years across all hockey, that's not great. Yes, it's great.
That part's great.
Yeah.
But it's not great. That a Stanley Cup is basically a blip.
Keep fighting the good fight.
I know, but and sadly, Minnesota runs TV when it comes to at least college hockey and TV ratings. They're consistently the highest rated games when it gets to the NCAA.
So Todd, I know you're about to say something, but I'm gonna hijack this.
Okay.
Do you think Bob has Minnesota hockey back yet?
Ooh.
Like they're fifth in the pairwise. They're fighting for the Big Ten against Michigan. The fans aren't there.
Yeah, that's the thing. What's your definition of back?
Like Cooley just committed. He's gonna be the number 2 or number 1 pick.
Ooh.
I don't. Well, everyone wants to compare it to what it was in the 70s and
2000s,
right? Or sure.
2000s, yeah.
But and that's the problem that I have with a lot of people here in Madison too, is that, well, why can't Wisconsin be in the tournament every year like they were in the 70s, like it was in the early 80s? It's like, well, college hockey has changed quite significantly if you haven't paid attention to that.
Oh yeah, it has.
And are they back? probably would like to see another couple of years to know for sure.
I know.
Then
it's an easy call. It's an easy call.
If you have, 2 really good years back to back, that's okay. That's saying something, right? Okay. If you then have year 3, year 4, year 5 be kind of mediocre, I don't think that tells you very much about being back. And
there's the other one there too. I mean,
those
are first round ones. They haven't gotten out of a regional that hasn't been in Minnesota to the Frozen Four since 2002.
But I just want to kind of historically snap back. When Woog left, last 2 years of Woog, they missed the NCAAs 2 years in a row.
Right.
The first year of Don, they missed. Next year, they made it. The year after that, they won the whole thing. Maybe taking Bob a little bit longer, but last year they made it to the tournament. Could this year be the start of a cycle like that, where they win a couple and then they start getting the Coolies, the Kessels, the Eric Johnsons, the Blake Wheelers, the Kyle Posos, players like that, but figure out a way to sustain it? Because I think this is maybe a transition where they're going from where they were in a sinkhole to where they shift.
That's the thing about sustaining is the thing that's interesting to me is because that takes a lot of planning, a lot of foresight, but a decent amount of luck too.
Luck. I was thinking
you get the right guys, and you get them to stay the number of years you think they're going to stay. And if 1 or 2 guys disrupts that, it can blow everything up, right?
But part of that is recruiting the right guys,
right,
that are going to stick around. Like if Nyes and Faber stick around, that's maybe a sign to me that Bob is getting the right culture of player.
Sure, but so much that isn't. I mean, yes, it's up to them, but it's not up to them, right? Because if Toronto calls Nyes and says, "We've got a place for you," and we're going for the cup this year. We got a place for you, and I know that's not going to happen this year. But how do you say no? I'm going to stick around here for another year where I don't know for sure who else is going to be around me. That's rough. That's a tough call,
especially when somebody like Toronto needs that position.
Everybody needs players right now, Jude. Everybody needs entry-level contracts. But you know what happens if you don't pan out? They send you to Chicago. They'll make you play for the Wolves, like Jack LaFontaine is doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Carolina gave him this kind of story. Come to Carolina. Be our backup goalie. We got a spot for you. All of a sudden, the guy comes back, plays 3 games. He's the NHL goalie of the week. They send LaFontaine to Chicago, and now he gets a new set of pads that match the Wolves unis instead of the Hurricane unis. And if Carolina wins the cup, Jack will not have his name on the cup.
Nope.
But that's the story they tell these kids as NHL teams. As much as the Carolina coaches kind of came out and said, look at what these colleges are doing to these kids, promising them scholarships and then taking them away. Like, certain teams do. NHL teams do the same thing. They cast players aside. They have 50 contracts they can have. If you're not in their projection and not in that 50, ECHL, good luck. Enjoy the bus, McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell. It's pretty harsh. But to answer my own question, I kind of feel like they're at this cusp of like, if things go right the next year, like Minnesota's back to where they're competing with the elites of college hockey again. They're in the tournaments year after year, making Frozen Four appearances, landing top recruits again. Because there was a time where they were losing a lot of top recruits. And now they grab like Cooley from the East Coast. They've never done that, ever.
Is goaltending still going to be a question, though? I mean, I see a lot of guys talking about goaltending here on the chat.
It's always the question, right? I mean, every team. You're not going anywhere without a guy you can at least feel like is
true and
good enough to not lose games.
And that's probably your story in Wisconsin right there. When you could, even when you didn't have the super elite teams, you still had really good goaltending there.
Right.
That could get you somewhere any year. And that's an area that, what did you say, the last 10 years? 15? I mean, since Elliott, that
right.
Because that's always been the story for the Badgers. Always good goaltending.
And that was one of the things that we kind of thought was one of the things that turned last year. You know, they had such a bad run of goalies, and it kind of just went back year and year. And it was, you know, once it was because they had a guy leave for the OHL a month before the season. And then they had to reach for someone, and that trickled down. And then they reached for Kyle Hayton as a grad transfer, and that didn't work, and that trickled down. And there was a stretch of 6 or 8 years where it was just either bad decisions or bad fortune that just took that position in a bad way or in a bad direction. And last year they got Robbie Baydoun from Michigan Tech, and I was like, okay, let's see what he can do. They got Cameron Rowe as a freshman who had been committed to 2 other places. And okay, I don't know where that's going either. And they worked, they meshed. They hadn't been above 900 as a save percentage in like 8 years or 7 seasons, something like that. And they finally got that just where they're like just good enough to keep us in games. And then obviously you've got Caulfield and Holloway and Weissbach and Pelton Weiss, all these guys that are scoring enough to cover for minor goaltending errors. But they finally were in that conversation of, okay, let's not defeat ourselves with goaltending. And then that's one of the things that happens at the end of the year. They defeated themselves with goaltending. Cam Rowe in the Big Ten championship game was out of sorts. And I still remember seeing that in warmups. There was something off about him in warmups that night, and he gave up 5 in the first 2 periods. And then Robbie Baydoun had a clunker in the regional, and people probably remember he turned the puck over behind the net and it got wrapped around, and that was basically the end of the game. They were shorthanded goal. I think put them up by 3 or 4. I don't know, but I thought that was one of the reasons why I thought last year could have been something bigger for them. And now this year Mo comes in. Don't really have a great track record. Don't really know what to think about him. Didn't really see enough of him at Minnesota to know what they're getting. And you had Rowe coming off of, what was all in all a pretty good freshman year. Just hasn't. It's just fallen out and for him. I mean, Mo's been pretty good all in all. I mean, he's had bad stretches, but
obviously both goalies haven't been. I wouldn't say they've been terrible. You've had each guy's been pulled, but I think that's been
4 times. So
but I think both that's been more of a case of the team playing in front of them.
It's mercy pulls. They are not a tremendously responsible group of forwards. I think it's probably a
Bob hinted at that
nice
in his availability this week. He's like, those forwards, they're going to fly the zone every once in a while. They're going to try to stretch and create offense. And, I don't think he said the word selfish, but,
it's,
aggressive maybe. All right, I'm going to grab a drink here.
You know what you're getting out of them, I guess, is one of the big things.
Yeah. I mean, we've got Corey V here in the chat. He's saying that, if they had Portillo or Dobish, and I'm like, I didn't think Dobish looked that great in the second game against Minnesota for Ohio State. Like, he gave up some pretty soft goals. And I just think sometimes you have these goalies where if teams attack them with a good strategy, they can find holes in your game. And the more games you play, the more holes you can find. I watch a fair amount of the Minnesota Wild, and I feel like sometimes teams are starting to find holes in Talbot's game, and they're just exposing it better. Like they find ways. It's like, okay, if he can see the shot, first shots, he's going to be good. If he sees the shot and it's a shot that he can save, no problem. But it's like when you create chaos and you make them move side to side and you make them adjust their angles, certain goalies do not do well with that, and they start creating holes for easy goals. Like I think that's one of the things with LaFontaine was that if people could get him kind of off kilter, all of a sudden shots that should be saved just slip through him because he's almost either trying to be over aggressive or something. He's just not patient and set. And teams start to pick up on that stuff and they expose it. And if you have a goalie with the mental makeup where that affects them, like you were saying with the Wisconsin goalies last year, that's a big part of the problem.
I was gonna say, people are saying put Vigo back in the middle.
I'm just a center. I'm built to be a center. I'm good on the draws.
I didn't realize I could do it. I'm like, oh, maybe if I just I could drag and drop.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, so we all kind of went into the season thinking, okay, LaFontaine's probably the best goalie coming back. I mean, we didn't know what to expect out of Ohio State, right? Who knew anything about Dobish really at this level? I mean, Portillo, everyone thought he was a good goalie. He's got a, good pedigree, but never saw him as a season-long number one goalie, so had to wait and see how that was going to turn out.
Mm-hmm.
Just around the Big Ten, it's like nothing's really turned out the way anyone thought it was going to be.
Goalie is clearly the hardest position to project. Like even look in the NHL. Like I was looking at the Athletics GM poll of like who are the top goalies, and it's almost like a mixer. Like you're going to be right on maybe 6 of the top 10, but there's going to be 4 guys that you think are top 10 goalies who could be in the bottom third, stat wise. And there's just so many variables that go into goalie. Bill Guerin was talking about with Barrero this week. He's just like, I kind of leave a lot of that stuff up to, I think it's Thomas Shabbat. It's like, he's our expert on goaltending, and he's the one we count on to let us know what's going on with our goalies, whether or not they're going to be okay or it's a blind spot and we need to address it. He's like, goaltending's hard to evaluate.
The interesting thing with Minnesota Vigs is that neither of the backups have played a second.
I know.
Technically, they could both be redshirted, couldn't they? Or there's probably some goofy stuff in there since they haven't played a second. They could technically be redshirted. And,
and with the portal.
Yeah.
We might not even know who's going to be on the Gopher roster next year for goaltending.
I mean, literally, if close, just tweak something. Bob's going to say, okay, which guy's going to lose his element? I mean, literally right then. And it's over for a season.
So this is actually something that I'm writing about tomorrow. Thinking back to that last game, the border battle game at Mariucci this Saturday night last year, the one that ended up 8-1. It was just a runaway. And so I don't know if you remember that, but LaFontaine got hurt in warmups. He took a shot off the collarbone and looked like he was not going to play. And so I was asking Jared Moe about this today. He said, yeah, I thought I was starting. He told me, get ready to start. Like, okay, I'm getting mentally ready. And all of a sudden I see Jack come back out. I'm like, okay, I guess we can forget about that now. I'm sitting back on the bench. And then everyone ends up in that game because, LaFontaine is pulled. Then they put Close in for the third period. and Rowe played that game for Wisconsin. So I'm just looking at those 4 goalies and how things have gone just like in every different direction for the 4 of them in the last year and 3 weeks or whatever it's been. I mean, LaFontaine goes off. Rowe hasn't been able to pull it back to anywhere he wanted it to be. Mo transfers to the other school, and now Close went from third stringer to starter in the middle of a Big Ten championship chase. Just a crazy set of like, a timeline that you can't get to line up in any.
All of a sudden, it starts to look like a scene from Homeland, where you've just got the pins and the red string from location to location.
And plus, we always thought that Bob wasn't really a fan of Mo, was he, Viggs? I mean, he just he didn't treat him that greatly.
I mean, I'm sure Todd knows a little bit about this, but I don't think Jared ever got a fair shake in Minnesota. No. And just Bob pushed him and pushed him and pushed him. And Jared's like, I obviously don't have a home in Minnesota. And he had to do what he had to do. And maybe that influenced his choice of school, I don't think Jared will say that on the record while he's at Wisconsin.
No. Granato said something today that when Mo came in, he said, I forget what exactly how he phrased it, but I just want to make sure I play against Minnesota. So yeah, I think there's something there.
And boy, wouldn't he love to mess up Minnesota's chance at a title this weekend?
I think we'll see Mo's best this weekend. I kind of hope we see Mo twice, because
I think so.
I think knowing the kid a little bit, he deserves it,
Mm-hmm.
And see if he's up for the challenge.
All right,
it's
guys.
Probably the number one storyline to watch this weekend.
It's after midnight. I went to go get a drink. I'm like, my gosh, it's midnight.
I told you we'd go till about midnight. So, Todd, thanks for staying up late.
Too bad. Always fun doing this.
There are still 30 people still watching live.
You guys make it worth it every Wednesday.
Seriously.
Sometimes Thursdays.
Right.
Todd, do you have plans for after the game on Friday?
I do not.
Okay.
I will be happy to join whoever, wherever. So,
keep me in mind, because I don't think I'll be there Saturday. I might, but
I'm taking off for home after Saturdays anyway. So,
right. So we'll have to scout something that's open after you're done doing your Facebook Live, which is a must-see for anyone who wants to see how Wisconsin is doing. If you ask
I watch it a lot, and I'm
one of the top followers.
I'll comment, and you'll mention me sometimes. I'm like, I love watching that, Todd. It's great stuff. But I was mentioning because your games are so damn late. I'm like, you need to go to bed.
And sometimes it's like I am like, oh God, I got to do this.
Got to do it.
I don't have to do it, but I feel like I have to do it, right?
Yep.
And then I say on Facebook, I'm like, I'm gonna watch. It's almost midnight.
but I don't. I like okay. I can pull it together for 10 minutes and make up something to talk about. Even if it's like feels like I've said the same things over and over again this season. It's like, they didn't get a real good performance in the back end.
They couldn't kill their penalties again. They took too many.
Yeah. I gave up 3 power play goals, and that's a killer. And boy,
at least Minnesota's power play sucks. So
here's the thing, though. It hasn't been awful. It's just the results have been awful. The process has actually looked pretty good. Like they gain the zone, they get possession, they're dangerous. Just some of their danger chances, they take too long. So if I was a goalie scouting Minnesota, I would not plan for the one-timer. I'd plan for guys to catch and shoot. And so that gives a goalie like Jared Moe time to slide over, stand up, and wait for the shooter to shoot rather than just slide over and give up top corners. Yep. And I think Jared will know that.
If anyone would. Yeah.
But
fun show, guys.
Yep. Fun.
Thanks everyone for staying on. So he's 31 now. Somebody came on and started watching it. Someone's watching.
They heard this is a great show.
Yeah.
I think this is the numbers I get from I get numbers from Facebook and YouTube. Facebook's just got 1 viewer. YouTube's 30. And we don't know what Twitter is. We don't get the Twitter numbers, so
till after. It's like Nielsen ratings. We don't get them till after. Todd, are you staying like on campus then?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll try to pick something convenient then.
There you go.
I'll start brainstorming. Punch is closed now, so that was a go-to for me.
Is it still closed?
Like closed?
No, just temporary with COVID.
Yeah.
Because the way Punch operates their business, they pay their employees pretty well because they have a skill and they want to retain them. So,
man, now you got me craving Punch pizza.
I love Punch pizza. But
Maximus?
Yeah, the Maximus is a good one. Yeah.
Oh, I love the Maximus. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks, people, for watching. We'll catch you next week. Later.
See ya.